Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Welcome to the show, and thank you for tuning in. I want to say a quick thank you to my guest on last week's episode, classical pianist Althea Waits. If you didn't get to hear it, you can listen to all of our episodes at entertalkradio.com/makingit, or download our app and take us with you. And also, be sure to tune in next week to hear my conversation with award-winning composer, arranger, vocalist, jazz pianist Billy Stritch. I'd like to take a moment to also thank the companies that help me sound my best, whether I'm performing live or in the studio recording and producing music. Blue Microphones, Taylor Guitars, Duesenberg Guitars, Seymour Duncan Pickups, Mesa Boogie Amps, Diodario Strings and Planet Waves, Motu Digital Performer, IK Multimedia, Fishman Acoustic Amps, and Exotic Effects. So often, I get asked questions about the creative process. So I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music business. You're really in for a treat, as I've invited my friends, some of the best and brightest in music, to share their stories on how they have influenced the music that has changed our lives. I guarantee you're going to love it. So let's get started. My guest today on this very unique show is Sam Daley-Harris, the author of Reclaiming Our Democracy, Healing the Break Between People and Government. We knew that today's show would air the day after the election and decided to have a different kind of guest and take the conversation in a different direction. Clearly, half of the people in our country were destined either way to be disappointed at the outcome of the election. Today's show is dedicated to all of you, those of you who are heartbroken and those of you who are relieved. I invited my guest today from Washington, D.C. to give us a crystal clear idea on how we can become more involved in uniting our country and creating a better world with our actions. I'm delighted to welcome Sam Daley-Harris to Making It with Terry Wollman. I don't start many introductions like this, but here goes. Sam Daley-Harris was my high school music teacher. He taught me the art of songwriting and how to listen. As Sam would say, I've come a long way since then. Sam was also a percussionist in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra, a songwriter, and co-authored the musical Becoming, which was a smash hit in Miami and flopped, his words, off-Broadway. Sam went on to found the anti-poverty lobby Results, co-found the Microcredit Summit with Nobel Peace Prize laureate Mohamed Yunus, and found the Center for Citizen Empowerment and Transformation. Mark Twain is supposed to have said, "The two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." Sam has dedicated his life to help people find and answer the why. Welcome to the show, Sam.
It's great to be here.
I think it's safe to say that this was the craziest, most negative election in our lifetimes. And a lot of people were inspired by their candidate of choice, but even more went into the election cycle feeling cynical and resigned, and came out of it even more cynical and resigned. How do you view this election, and more importantly, where can we go from here?
Well, I actually live in New Jersey, and I came early this morning to Washington, D.C. for 2 days of meetings. And there's a lot of sadness and grief in the circles that I'm around. And so I see that so clearly today, and I'm sure I'll see more of it tomorrow. And I think my main message is that if we can find a way to engage, to make a difference with our voices, that cynicism and discouragement begins to disappear. And I want to just tell one story. About 3 years ago, I spoke on 15 college campuses, and one of them is Rutgers in New Jersey. And before the lecture, I met with groups of students. They were sitting around tables, and I'd go to each table and meet the students and hear a question. I get to the last table, and the last student says, "I'm in an honors futures class. With an eye to 50 years in the future, what's the most important issue we could work on?" And I said, well, my friends in climate change tell me if we don't deal with that, we're toast. And my friends in getting money out of politics say, if we don't fix that one, nothing's going to change. And my friends in global poverty tell me it's a blight on humanity. But I said, for me, the most important issue is why so few of us see ourselves as change makers. If we could fix that one, there would be a barrage of people coming into all of these different issues. And I hope that our conversation today will help give people insights into how to be a better change maker.
I do too. That's why I invited you on the show today. What would you say to the so many people that feel discouraged and fearful that we've taken a leap backwards when it comes to racism, sexism, xenophobia?
Well, I think two things. One is I think we have, actually. I mean, someone said in one of the meetings today, between the crying and others, that Martin Luther King said the arc of humanity bends toward justice. And it certainly feels like it bent back a bit last night and today. So I think that's something that we need to acknowledge as a real possibility if it comes to fruition from what was said during the campaign. But then the other part is, so what do we do about it? I mean, do we just moan and bemoan it and kind of bury our heads in the sand? Or do we find an issue we're passionate about and get educated and get involved to make sure that that doesn't happen?
And, you know, I also want you to speak to the people that are the 50% that are happy, the people that voted for Donald Trump, because I'm really hoping the focus of this show ultimately is not excluding anybody. I want really for you to speak on how we can all unite and work together.
Well, sure, I will. And I think it would be useful for me to just tell my story from hopelessness, really, to action. And this story in activist parlance is referred to the story of self. And it's really a story about what happened in your life and what decisions did you make about those events that got you to where you are, in this case, in my case, as an activist. And so I tell this story all the time, but I think it's our story too, and it's really instructive. And it goes like this. I have a bachelor's. Sorry.
Sam, let me interject for a second. I think it's important for our audience to know that the reason that I invited you is because you are very socially and politically aware worldwide, but you also are a musician. You started as a musician, and you're about to tell us really what motivated you from your move from musician to activist.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I talk about my story, I start with, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music. I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years, taught high school music, and then 36 years ago founded the Anti-Poverty Lobby Results. And people say, what? Music? Poverty lobby? What was the motivation for that kind of change? And when I look back in my life, there are a couple of incidents that pushed me in a different direction, basically. I graduated from high school in 1964, and I played timpani in the orchestra at the graduation ceremony. And just before the ceremony, a flute player came back to the percussion section and told me that a high school fraternity brother of mine, a year younger, had died the day before in a tractor-trailer accident in Georgia. It was her next-door neighbor, so she knew about it before I did. I always say, I was 17. I mean, when I was 17, I thought I had forever. I mean, mortality was an irrelevant concept. But during the mourning period and the funeral, after the funeral, I went with my friend's younger brother to pick up his report card from the homeroom teacher. It began to dawn on me that maybe I had 17 more minutes or months or years, and the questions of purpose came up. Why am I here? What am I here to do? 4 years later, college graduation, 1968, Robert Kennedy's assassinated right in those days. And it's another one of this, what is this life? What is this death? Why am I here? What am I here to do? No answers, but the questions are getting clear. 9 years later, I always say I'm a little slow, 1977, I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger. And I go to this thing thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. So I go to this thing and it's obvious right away, there's no mystery to growing food or clean water or basic health. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature. People will just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my question, why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. And this is the end of the story. In 1978, 1979, I speak to 7,000 high school students on ending world hunger. Before I go into the first classroom, I read some statements calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote him. I don't want to know if you met him. Just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, 200 knew, fewer than 3%. Mm-hmm. Just over 97% didn't know. And results started out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger and on the one hand, and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other. And that was that crazy journey from music, in my case, to activism.
Do you find that there's not much difference between the two?
Well, I think both of them done well, and I think the one that's easiest to not do well, I guess, is the activism part. Right. Involves creativity. It involves imagination. Involves improvisation, really. Involves seeing connections that aren't maybe exactly apparent to the naked eye, you might say. And so, I can see an article in a paper and, like, slightly in a jazz way, see how I could riff on that article to pivot and make the point I want to make. And so there's that creative piece to it. And I have to say this other thing. I was watching a documentary a few weeks ago on Lin-Manuel Miranda and the making of Hamilton, and he was on his laptop in the thrall of writing one of the songs, and the whole energy of it was going on. And there can be a similar creative energy to writing an op-ed, for publication, and kind of going back to whatever that well of imagination is that musicians and other artists go to. Activists need to go to it also. Right.
Well, we've known each other for well over 40 years, and I've watched you move with a great deal of elegance and passion from being a very accomplished musician to being a very accomplished activist. And I want to take another look with you at expanding the concept of making it, this time looking back at your life and really liking everything that you've done. You've made a beautiful family, and you've made a difference in the world globally, not just in the United States.
Yeah, well, I think there's one way to look at it. And when I tell people this, when we first started in 1984 in our advocacy around child survival, the numbers from UNICEF were horrifying, that every day around the world, 41,000 children under the age of 5 were dying from largely underlying preventable malnutrition and disease, things like measles coupled with malnutrition. And for the last 31 years, my colleagues and I, mostly volunteers, have been working to reduce that, such that it's gone from 41,000 a day child deaths around the world in the early 80s to 16,000 a day today. Now, it's still crazy, 16,000 a day. It's mind-boggling still. It is. But still, it's tremendous progress. And most people, if you ask them, well, how's the world going? What you'll get is something related to hell in a handbasket, and have no clue that in this example, and I've got others, I'll give you one or two others, there's amazing progress going on. And not only has it gone down to 16,000 a day, but there's a sustainable development goal to get it near zero by 2030. Damn, wouldn't that be something cool to work on? Except most people don't even know that goal exists. And, that's part of the job of the activists, to bring more people in. Let me give you one other example. When we started lobbying in the mid-'80s, there were 150 million children of elementary school age not in school. Not like first to sixth graders not in school. They're somewhere else. And, that's gone down from 150 million in the mid-'80s to 58 million today. That's crazy that there, in this day and age, there are 58 million kids not in school who should be in elementary school. But still, it is also tremendous progress. Right. And again, there's a big goal for 2030 to get it to zero, like all kids finish secondary school. Well, will we make it? Well, probably not at the current rate. Could we make it? Could we make it? Yeah, of course. What's missing? People, their voices, their activism. And so, so that's just some examples of ways that people, in my case, mostly volunteers that I've worked with, can say they were part of that they really had a hand in that. And that's the exciting thing.
It is exciting, and it's good to know that there are things that we can do. We're heading into our first break, and we're going to be back with my guest, Sam Harris, to talk about how we can be more involved in creating a change and uniting together to continue to make this a wonderful country that we live in. Sam, please stick around, and we'll be right back.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
And we're back with my guest, Sam Harris. Sam, thanks for making the time to be on the show today. I really appreciate it.
It's a thrill.
I want to expand the definition of making it to include what artists are already doing to make the world a better place, and also what more we all could do individually. And I'd like to start by letting people know how they can get in touch with you. Can you give them your email address and talk about Center for Citizen Empowerment and Transformation?
Okay, great. Yeah, so my email address, it's a little long. It's sam@empoweringcitizens365.org. sam@empoweringcitizens365.org. And to talk about my work, I'm going to share a few quotes that point to our predicament and how my work is to address that predicament. And this first quote is from Frances Moore Lappé. She wrote Diet for a Small Planet, got a bunch of people off to being vegetarians decades ago.
Myself included.
There you go. And from a more recent book, Getting a Grip 2, she said, our real problem is not a heating planet or rampant malnutrition. We only have one real problem, our own feelings of powerlessness to manifest the solutions right in front of our noses. She said, our real problem is not a heating planet or rampant malnutrition. We only have one real problem, our own feelings of powerlessness to manifest the solutions right in front of our noses. So my work is to help groups create structures of support that can dissolve the powerlessness. So that when you get involved with an organization, the dissolving of the powerlessness, the healing starts to happen so that you can really be a full-blown activist. I'm going to do another one from Frank Rich, who was a columnist for the New York Times. And this was from a Times column 9 years ago, but it could have been 9 seconds ago. He said, last weekend, a new poll found that only 24% of Americans believe their country's on the right track. That might mean that 76% believe the country's on the wrong track. Wrong track is a euphemism. We are a people in clinical depression who know our ideals have been vandalized. I actually love that quote because it's so honest. I'm going to repeat it. He said last weekend, a new poll found that only 24% of Americans believe their country's on the right track. That might mean that 76% believe the country's on the wrong track. Wrong track is a euphemism. We are a people in clinical depression who know our ideals have been vandalized. End of quote. And my response to that is most nonprofit organizations don't acknowledge the toxicity into which they send their volunteers or their volunteer advocates. Consequently, they don't create a powerful enough structure of support that can be the antidote to that toxicity. Instead, they offer mouse-click activism, thin gruel for anyone hungry to make a difference. And so that's my work, helping groups offer more than mouse-click activism, more than thin gruel for anyone hungry to make a difference. And I think I want to read, if it's okay, an excerpt from my book, Reclaiming Our Democracy. And this excerpt is from a woman. Actually, at the time, she was a volunteer, and now she's a staff member of Citizens Climate Lobby. And she said, before I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, this might have been 5 or 6 years ago, I was suffering from climate trauma. I would read Bill McKibben's book, Earth, and I would weep at home, and I would weep at work. And then I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, and 18 months later, I was co-leading a workshop on how to build relationships with members of Congress and editorial writers. So I'm going to read just 2 little excerpts, and she goes this long, brilliant kind of musical thing. She says, she talks about some people use the relationship like a work relationship with a member of Congress. She says, my relationship model is different. I adore romantic relationships, so I use romance as my model. That first meeting with an editorial writer, it's like a blind date, only you've decided beforehand you're going to marry this fellow. You're going to be sweet and interesting, not too intense. If it doesn't work with the editor, you're going to marry one of his friends at the newspaper. Business editor, environment writer, city editor, someone at this paper will find you interesting and compelling. It's just a matter of being persistent until you find the right connection. And then the end, I'm not just going to read this end. She does this Hill visit where she goes to 20 congressional offices. And she says, during our conference, I met with 20 congressional offices. I met with many folks whose view of the world was very different than mine. Going into their offices was hard. I had to let go of a lot of emotional baggage. I could no longer judge them or hold hostility in my heart toward them. I had to let go of my fear of climate change and my fear that they wouldn't listen to me. I had to center myself in love. Releasing fear and centering in love, this is sacred and profound work. And what she, end of quote, and what she was saying was, meeting 20 congressional districts of congressional offices was sacred and profound work, and where she had started was climate trauma. That's a big journey from climate trauma to sacred and profound, and I think that's what's available to people if they can find an organization that will feed them, that will nurture them, that will take them from kindergarten to first, third, fifth, ninth, 12th grade and beyond as an activist. And the group she's involved with is just one of them, Citizens Climate Lobby. And you can reach them at citizensclimatelobby.org.
I think it's important for people to know a story about you from many years ago when you co-founded the Microcredit Summit Campaign. And I remember you telling me, I've never forgotten this, and I think it will put into context all the ways that you can be involved at whatever degree and the importance of it. You had told me that you were going into or not you personally, but your organization would go into the smallest villages in the poorest countries to find the people that were the most hopeless. And then you would bring them and explain that you were going to create small groups and loan them a small amount of money so they could buy a cow or a chicken or egg. But you didn't give the money to them. You had them go and find the people that were so hopeless that they wouldn't even consider coming to the meeting.
Yes, now that story was told to me by Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006, and he referred to it as looking for the most timid, and the people that would come forward the last because of their despair and their difficulty. And if I could, I'm going to just tell quickly the story of how Grameen Bank started. And this is this bank for the poor in Bangladesh that won the Nobel Peace Prize with Muhammad Yunus about 10 years ago, actually next month. And so he got his PhD in economics at Vanderbilt University and then went home to teach economics at a university in Bangladesh. This is in the late 70s. And he said the economic theories in my textbook were very elegant, but they weren't working in the village next to my campus. I'm going to go in the village and learn economics from the villagers. And it's 1976. He said, I met a woman. She was making bamboo stools for sitting on. And I asked her how much profit she made every day. And she said, I make 2 pennies a day profit. He said, how is that possible? It's a beautiful stool. Why do you only make 2 pennies a day profit? She said, I don't have the money to buy the bamboo, so I borrow the money from a trader, a moneylender, on the condition that I sell the finished product back to him at a price he sets. And the price he sets barely covers the costs of the bamboo. I make 2 pennies a day profit. He said, well, if you could sell it to anyone, could you make more than that? She said, I could, but I don't have the money to buy the bamboo. So he had a student go around the village and found 42 people who needed a grand total of $27, an average of 68 cents. This is mid-70s, average of 68 cents a person, enough money to pay off the moneylender, buy their raw materials, make their product, and sell it to the highest bidder. So he lent $26 to 42 people, and these 42 people became the first borrowers of what eventually became Grameen Bank, which means village bank. It now has 8 million borrowers in Bangladesh, and it was really out of such a simple action at the beginning that he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
It's an amazing concept, and I think it really speaks to the sense of hopelessness that some people feel, not everybody. Again, I want to acknowledge that some people are happy and relieved and pleased with and hopeful with the candidate that they elected, but there's a lot of people that are, as you said, sad and feeling a sense of anger and hopelessness and fear.
Yeah, that's right. And so the antidote to that is to be in action. But you can't just be in action. You have to be in some structure of support that will support your action and not leave you dangling alone, kind of thing. I'm going to share a quote from a Republican senator, the late Mark Hatfield, who said, "We stand by as children starve by the millions because we lack the will to eliminate hunger. Yet we have found the will to develop missiles capable of flying over the polar cap and landing within a few hundred feet of their target. This is not innovation. It is a profound distortion of humanity's purpose on Earth." And so when we can find a cause we care about, maybe it's getting money out of politics. Maybe it's ending hunger, poverty in the U.S. or around the world. Maybe it's climate change. Maybe it's mass incarceration, ending mass incarceration. If we can find an issue we care about and find an organization that will feed us, that will empower us, then we're golden. Then we're in great shape. And in the book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, there's this drawing, and there's a small circle labeled your comfort zone. And next to it is a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens. And if you can find an organization that can encourage you out of your comfort zone and over to where the magic happens, it doesn't get any better than that.
And so you're basically saying, don't be overwhelmed, just pick one. Instead of wondering where to start.
Absolutely. And then don't be overwhelmed, pick one, but pick one that can give you support. So I'd mentioned Citizens Climate Lobby. We've talked about results.org, which focuses on global and domestic poverty. Another group that I work with is the Quaker Lobby, FCNL, Friends Committee on National Legislation, FCNL.org, and their focus is ending mass incarceration, and they're working on sentencing reform. So someone who's caught with 3 pounds of pot 20 years ago doesn't get a 55-year jail sentence because of mandatory minimums. Right. And the like. So that's what they're working on. And you can find organizations that have the groups and that feed the groups, usually through a monthly conference call, where the Citizens Climate Lobby have 1,000 to 2,000 on their monthly conference call. 20 here, 5 in this room, 10 in this room, 15 in that room. With 1,000 to 2,000 and hundreds more listening to the recording the week after. It's a kind of this joint is jumping, not a woe is me, I'm alone, I can't get anything done, this is never going to work. But no, I mean, that group, their volunteers had 3,000 letters to the editor published last year up from 36 published in 2010.
That's remarkable. What do you think made for that change?
Well,
Just
I mean,
the focus
again,
and commitment?
yeah, first of all, they do focus on an issue. There's they call it carbon fee and dividend, a rising tax on carbon refunded to the public. They focus, but then they go on the road and they start the groups. They put people together in groups, and then they feed the groups. They empower the groups with education and the like. So it's a combination of all of that. And you heard a little bit of the result when I read that bit from climate trauma to sacred and profound. Right. That's really where we want to be headed.
So these groups they're community based and they're grassroots, and but they're not with blinders on. In other words, the groups that you are mentioning and that you've been involved in really have a broad view of the world and our place in the world, not just as an American or as somebody who lives in New York or Florida or California, but the big picture.
The ones I mentioned are national groups with local affiliates that they empower. Another one that I really just started working with, and they haven't even started their groups yet. We're getting that ready. Is American Promise. And they worked with the folks in California working on Prop 59, which was to overturn Citizens United, which would end the notion that corporations are people and money is speech. So you can spend as much money on elections if you're a corporation or if you're someone who's wealthy, and really give the voice back to the people. So that's another kind of group that's working on this kind of stuff.
We're going into our final break, and we've got one more segment. I'm here with guest Sam Harris, author, lecturer, political activist, and musician. And we will be right back.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on InterTalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on InterTalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Welcome back. I'm here with my guest, Sam Harris. And before you read a couple of quotes that we were just talking about during the break, I'd like you to give everybody your website. We're also going to make sure to put it up on the page at entertalkradio.com so people can find all the resources that you're giving in today's show. But your website, Sam, is?
Sure. www.citizenempowermentandtransformation.org. Ouch, that's a mouthful. www.citizenempowermentandtransformation.org.
Thank you.
And they can find it on the website, too.
Yes. So I'm curious. I know you want to read a couple of quotes, but I'm also curious how your musical training has influenced your work. I know you're no longer dealing with writing melodies and lyrics and arrangements and scheduling rehearsals, but you still say that music carries over into your life's work. How so?
Well, let me say a couple of things. One is, in the earliest days, I was with Results for 15 years. We would have a conference every year with typically 300 at the conference. And I would teach three-part harmony. I mean, we would do the Rose in three-part harmony with 300. And what's interesting, it was hardly anyone had vibratos, so it was kind of cool the balance of that all. So there was that kind of thing. And then there was one point in 1990 where we were organizing candlelight vigils before the World Summit for Children. About a week before, and I happen to know David Pomerantz and David Shire, and asked those two songwriters to co-write, and they did a song for the World Summit for Children Candlelight Vigils called In Our Hands. And so it's touched, here and there and now and again throughout, but I think mostly it's the imagination that music comes with that I then bring to more of the day-to-day work. I think there's a lot of really important improvisation that makes activism work best.
That makes sense to me because it's never seemed to me that you no longer are an artist. You still are as much as an artist to me in the way you live your life as when you were playing in the Philharmonic or writing songs.
Well, I try. Yeah, I try. Yeah.
Well, I see the carryover.
And also, this is one other thing. I can easily be around people who do their work in activism, be it staff or whomever, without the passion. As if they aren't always getting up to the mic. And we are all always getting up to the mic in some way. And so we need to bring the energy and the passion every time, even though it can be left out in too much activism.
Sure. Well, what are a couple of these quotes that you wanted to share with our listeners?
Yeah, this was another one, and I think it's from Reclaiming Our Democracy, and it's especially good for this time of a need for healing. And the backstory before I read it is there's about volunteers telling this story in Georgia, in Atlanta, and this is from 30 years ago, but he's still active today. And he's in the organization Results, and his congressman, a Republican conservative congressman, votes against famine aid for Ethiopia in 1985. And he talks about how embarrassed he was. If Congress was a sporting event, they'd be in the stands with bags over their heads. They were so embarrassed about what their congressman had done, which is vote against famine aid. And we got to talking and really urged him to do what a group in another city had done, which was to really see the humanity side of their congressman. And they took a prayer And they adapted it, taking the other congressman's name out and putting theirs in. And I'm going to read the prayer. They would read this at the beginning of their meetings, and it went like this. Thank you, God, for Pat Swindoll. We know he's a good man who wants to do right in the world. We know he struggles with the same problems we do, closing our hearts to those who don't agree with us. There are no thoughts or feelings that he's had that we haven't had, and vice versa. We pray for all of us to learn compassion for people in our country and far away, for rich and poor. We pray that Pat and we will be less frightened of each other. We pray our focus will be more to love and appreciate him and less to change him. Help us remember that sharing love with the world is the highest contribution we can make and will lead to children being fed and the planet surviving. Forgive our righteousness and anger. Open our hearts and minds to find the next expression of love for Pat that he can receive. End of quote. And they would read it at a meeting, and then they'd go, yeah, right. And they'd read it the next week, and they'd go, yeah, sure. But eventually they kept reading it, and it kind of sunk in, and they would really connect with their member of Congress. And over a 2-year period, they finally got to him 2 years later and asked him to co-sponsor a bill on microfinance, microloans. And he said, yes. And he said, you know, I have this column in the local paper. Do you think you could draft a column, for, an article for my column so we can educate the public? And this is someone they were so embarrassed about 2 years later that they wanted to have bags over their heads. And now he says, I'm ghostwriting for a congressman, who I didn't have high thoughts on 2 years earlier. And it's an example of not giving up on your member of Congress. I'm doing a webinar for the climate lobby tomorrow night, in fact, on the champion scale, taking a member of Congress from opponent to neutral, from neutral to supporter, from supporter to advocate to leader, and leader to champion. And so it's an exciting journey, especially if you can do the kind of work I was just describing in Atlanta with that member of Congress.
Well, speaking of climate change, you're now dealing with a president and administration that doesn't acknowledge climate change as being real. And yes. I know that you have, for many years, dealt being maybe an outsider, but having the attention of Congress. I know that you're very involved. You have opportunities to speak in front of politicians and interface with them without being a politician yourself. How are you going to approach this? Or do you just continue on your course?
Well, again, let me just say this. Number one, the Citizens Climate Lobby this year, they've enrolled 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats to join the Climate Solutions Caucus. They've part of the groups that enrolled 14 Republicans in co-sponsoring a resolution saying climate change is real, it's partially man-made, and we need public and private solutions. So they're already in the vineyards where 1 year ago, you couldn't have gotten one Republican to say it's real and partially man-made. And
what do you think?
Well, why could you not before?
Yeah. What would cause Republicans, to make a blanket statement that something doesn't exist?
I mean, it would be combinations of things. I mean, the attention Al Gore got on climate change would be one ingredient. The Koch brothers and their involvement with coal and campaign funding would be another example. So when you go from that kind of thing to 14 Republicans saying, yeah, it's real and it's partially man-made, that's hope. I mean, it's not done, but it's hope. And so I think those numbers will continue to grow. And that happened because citizens got involved and they got empowered and they got in action. And they got involved with an organization that fed them and didn't leave them dangling.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you say to people that are struggling to make a living and spend time with their families and having 2 jobs? And where do they find time?
here's the thing. It's very legitimate for someone to come up to me and say, look, I have a job and 2 little kids. I just really can't get involved in this. Or somebody else says, I have a job and 2 kids. I have to get involved in this.
Right.
And so, it's the same situation almost, but you just have a different view. And what's right for a person is right for a person. I was reading this article, and it was interesting to me. David Letterman was interviewed in the New York Times last month. And part of the article, I'll quote it, it's a sentence or two. He said, I don't miss late night television, and I'm a little embarrassed that for 33 years, it was the laser focus of my life. It took a lot of energy, and it probably would have been better expended elsewhere. Now it just seems like, really? That's what you did? End of quote.
Great
and so,
quote.
And the interview was because he spent a week in India working on the documentary, I think it's The Year of Living Dangerously, on environment. He's, in fact, gotten involved now. But looking back on 33 years, I think he's saying, maybe I could have used my voice a little better. Not quit his job necessarily, but somehow used it a little better. And I think we could all look at that and ask that question and see what the answer is for us.
There's we've got about 6 minutes left, and I know that there's something that you want to end with, but before that, I'd like to ask you a question that I end my shows with, and it's this: at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what advice would you give your younger self?
I guess the bottom line is trust the process. Plans are great, but I had a lot of plans. I was, and the thing is, I am focused. Well, originally started out in music and ended up where I ended up. So when my son, who's a freshman at University of North Carolina, and his passion is baseball analytics, Moneyball, sabermetrics, as far as I'm concerned, go for it. If you can find your passion, if your passion changes, you'll be able to find it. If you can find your bliss, you know what that's about, and you'll be good at finding your bliss. And so I would say that all along I was looking for and finding my bliss, and when it changed, I could find the new one, kind of thing. And so it didn't turn out any way like I expected, and just trust the process and be true to myself. Just listen honestly.
That's great, and also I love that you've embraced the change. When something new presented itself to you, you found a way to bring your passion and heart and commitment and integrity into the next thing that you did, and then the next thing and the next thing, and that's a smart way to go through life. Yeah, it's been a thrill. There's this quote from Buckminster Fuller: "The things to do are the things that need doing, that you see need to be done, and that no one else seems to see needs to be done." Right. It's an interesting concept. It is. Yeah. I'd like to turn the last 3 minutes over to you to finish with whatever you want to say to our audience. Well, a lot of times I use this quote from George Bernard Shaw's Man and Superman to really speak to who people are. I mean, you could be discouraged, but this is who we are at our essence. And I may do it twice if there's time. This is a true joy in life. The being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being a force of nature, instead of a selfish, feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and I want to do for it whatever I can. It is my privilege. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake.
Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. And if there's time, this is the true joy in life.
Yeah, there is time.
This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by myself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature, instead of a selfish, feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. And that's our option. We can make it burn with our music, with our art, with our drama, as brightly as possible, and we can also look for ways to bring activism into our life and be an artist with that and make that burn as brightly as possible too.
So for all of you who are feeling a sense of despair or a sense of relief, as I had said to either one of you out there, because we've got a 50-50 split in the country right now. Yep. It's still really important for everybody to bring their passion and their belief and their integrity to being involved. Isn't that correct? I mean, it's really about involvement and passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Lawrence Lessig, the Harvard professor, said, we did a poll and found that 96% of Americans want money out of politics, but 91% say it can't be done. That's the politics of resignation. You've got to find an organization that will help thaw the resignation. And groups like results.org, citizensclimatelobby.org, americanpromise.net, and FCNL, the Quaker Lobby, FCNL.org.
Thank you, Sam Harris, for spending this past hour with me on this very important day in our country, post-election. I really appreciate your time and your insight. And please, everybody, go to the website and check out and become involved. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Wollman.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.